I have 4 Airsoft G36s in front of me, and I have one product that says it can help us bring a lot of these into modernity. What I have in front of me is a new offering from Clutch Precision, and usually I like what they put out for the G36 bodies, but this one was a little bit different and somewhat disappointing. That doesn't mean we're not gonna try to make it work, so I'm gonna be doing something on camera for you guys that has not been done yet, and I think we'll allow this to work. This is an HKey handguard. Ultimate Industries was one of the first to come out with a repro on the market, but Clutch Precision wanted to try their hand at making a G36 length one. And this thing, just from the get-go, looks fantastic. This is their gas blowback style replica. However, they do have an option on their website for AEGs, which comes with a little part that should cover the gap. If you've watched my previous videos, you know that there are different body styles that AEGs went through, from Tokyo Marui to Ares to S&T and JG. There are minor differences, and especially for these AEG ones, they leave a significant cutout portion that doesn't allow you to use the standard HKey because there would be about a 1-inch gap right here. However, when you buy the AEG version from Clutch Precision, they include this little plastic piece here. It is 3D printed, and it solves the problem of covering that gap up. But the question is, does it really solve it? Now, before we go any further, I do want to mention that Clutch Precision did send this to me as a gift, but of course, as always, zero stipulations. I'm making this video because I want to show you guys the capabilities or lack thereof of a piece like this. On their website, they claim that this will fit for WE AEGs, S&T, Ares, and the Specna Arms G36s. And in front of me, I have the Ares G36X, which should just accept this, which we're gonna test. Old school Ares body. A JG, which I don't believe it should work for. We're gonna see if it does, but they don't claim it is, so I'm not gonna judge it on that at all. And an old school S&T. This was actually the first G36 I ever built out. This thing is a decade old at this point, and we're gonna see how this works. So let's kick it off with just testing this on the G36X, which is the same body style as the VFC gas blowbacks. I absolutely love this build. This thing is just solid as a rock. So I'm gonna take off my Ultimate Industries handguard. If you recall, this one definitely was a little tricky to work with, and you did have to file down some parts, but I'm hopeful that the Ultimate Industries won't have any issues. All right, oh wow, yeah, this is the one that had the MOSFET in it. I mean, just comparing side by side, the finish looks pretty similar. There are some minor markings on the Ultimate Industries one where this Clutch Precision one is very flat and matte, which I do like. I wish I had a real one to compare them both side by side. But just because of how I have this build set up, I am gonna remove this little dot end piece right here. Only because for my AEG, I have the wires in the way. For gas blowback or for your AEG, you might not need to even worry about that. And I already lost one of the screws. All right, so removing that main body pin screw, we will slide this on and over. It's tight, but yeah, that is gonna work. I just wanted to make sure it lined up there. And honestly, with a little bit less force than my Ultimate Industries one. I'm gonna take this right back off, so I'm not gonna screw it in all the way. But as you can see, this does fit on the G36X body pretty perfectly. One would hope that it does because it's kind of built for the VFC gas blowbacks and this shares the same body style, so I'm happy to report that this does work on the G36X. Really love to get into the gas blowback side of things. I'm loving the gas blowback experience so far, but it's so expensive. The next one I'm gonna show you isn't one that they claim it works on, and in fact, before this video, I did test it and it doesn't, but I wanna show you a way that you might be able to make it work. Let me just quickly pull it up. And here is where we get to the part that it should be just fine on. I'm gonna pull up the two bodies that we have. The first being an old classic Ares, and the second being an even older classic S&T. Now, the claim is that this will slide on, no problem, and there will be a gap, so that's where this will fill in. I'm gonna show you what it looks like with the gap first. Just to show you that dimensionally, yeah, it fits perfectly, but there is that little gap. And now going for the old S&T. Here we go, no problem whatsoever. Because the S&T is technically a clone of the Ares, there shouldn't be any difference between the two. And really, if we examine the bodies, there isn't much of a difference at all. Maybe very minor tolerances, but it's all the same. So now let's take a look at this. If you were to use this standalone before even putting it on a gun, you're gonna take this little plastic piece, slide it over that notch on the bottom, and insert it right here. As you can tell, it definitely takes up a space where that gap usually is. And looking at this, I already see an issue with it that I'm not a fan of. If you take a look in here, you'll see small gaps on either of the sides. right where the main body of the HKey rail will sit, the plastic piece does not sit flush. And I'm not sure why that is the case, because on original bodies with original HKeys, you don't see those gaps, so that's kind of disappointing. I'm sure it would take some minor tweaking of this plastic piece to get it to sit flush along the inside of the HKey. But unfortunately, what's even more disappointing, let's take this and put it on the Aries. If we slide this body through, you'll notice that I'm having a lot of trouble just kind of wiggling it on. This will not fit. And there's a couple key reasons for that, I think. And we're gonna attempt to troubleshoot that in this video. As you slide the main body of the HKey rail on, this small slot on the bottom already fits into the body right here. It doesn't fit very snug, but it does have a space, and that's typically where the wires go through. So when you have this little plastic adapter here, you'll see that it kind of sits not only too big, but not flush with the receiver at all. So this little extra slot down here at the end isn't necessary because it doesn't serve any other function. And even when we take the S&T body, which again, it's the same exact thing, it doesn't fit on it whatsoever. It really should cover this small rectangular gap here. But as you'll notice, if you were to try to fit this, the rectangular gap is still there because this does not sit flush against it. I was really hopeful that this was going to be the end-all be-all solution to the Aries, S&T, WE, but I don't think that they tested it on bodies like this, which to my knowledge hasn't changed with Aries and S&T, if they're even making G36s anymore. WE, maybe, whichever ones they had in-house. I unfortunately don't have a WE to test it on, but there's just a lot left on the table that this doesn't work for. But you know me, I don't give up hope, and I think there is a solution to get this thing to work, because I'd really love for more people to be able to build out accurate G36 KA4 builds and not have to go for a particular body style for an AEG or for only the VFC gas blowback. And I think that comes with cutting this down a little bit. If we take a look at the body that we have and this HKey piece right here, if we slot this in here, it should fit and cover everything we need it to. What it doesn't need to cover is this bottom portion here. So I think if I trim this off a little bit, by cutting this down entirely and maybe filing it down a bit up here, we might be able to get this to fit a little bit better. Now, I'm going to modify this to the point of no return, essentially. So let me go get a blade and see what I can do. I don't have my Dremel, unfortunately. I lent that out, but I think I might be able to get some work done on this. All right, so got a little saw here. We're gonna see if we can cut this part off first and just see how that fits along this body here. Because as you can tell, if we were to trim from here on, we should be okay, but I think there's still too much of a gap. So we'll play around with this. We'll see what we can get done. Yeah, we'll at least trim this off. I want to see what this does. I know this looks like a toddler is doing it, but hey, it worked. All right, so sand this down a bit. Not too worried about that. I can clean it up later, but does this fit over that block area? And unfortunately, it still does not. As you guys can see, this little block area should cover this right here. So we're gonna need to remove even more material in the name of these two back pieces here. I'm almost tempted to just go straight through and cut just this little block area out, but I know that's gonna leave a gap here. I honestly, if we look at it from the bottom, I don't think that's too detrimental. And honestly, that's not, it could be worse. It's not the best, but it could be worse. I think we're gonna take these two little end pieces off because that should allow us the ability to put this in a proper spot without any more impeding plastic. There we go. All right. When you let the blade do the work, it does the work. All right, so does this fit right here? And look at that. It fits in that little slot perfectly. So, and slide this on, will it work? This is definitely, I don't want to say voiding the warranty, but hey, all right, okay, so it does work. It does work better, although because it doesn't have that support that's clipping onto here, it doesn't sit well. So here's what might need to happen. What I would recommend doing is if you do end up going for this option, you can cut those pieces off, and if you epoxy this into your body piece right here, that'll work pretty perfectly. I'm not going to do that to this because, again, I don't need to, but this will still allow you to use the standard KAC rails, standard G36 handguards. It'll work, but again, because it doesn't have any attachment point to this now, and it's just kind of floating around, it's not going to fit, obviously. So clearly, I'm pretty disappointed. With some epoxy, you can get this to fit and lock in perfectly, where it'll of course be a little more flush, but this is really kind of like a one-gun solution if you did have to modify it and, again, epoxy it to an airsoft replica. I was really hoping this would be a one-stop solution, something to be the end-all, be-all for airsoft KA4 aspiring builders. But, of course, with anything that we do in this impression hobby, the work is never done. Hopefully, Clutch Precision will see this and make some modifications or tweaks, test it on different body styles, and make some improvements. Because, again, I would really like to see this succeed. The rail itself is beautiful quality, but this little 3D printed plastic adapter leaves a lot to be desired. If you have experience with this, especially on like a WE AEG, let me know how it works, because again, it's got potential. All in all, this is the Gear.Locker. If you guys want to see more German kit related videos, let me know in the comments below. See you guys in the next one.